must save him.
Oh, hi. It's been 2 years, hasn't it? Well, in the middle of time, in 2 years, we took over that city, the other city. A bunch per day. Now, we're gonna take over Guatemala City in the apocalypse. As you can see, I choose my base as a jail, basically. I choose a jail as a base in this city. Let me show you around. Kitchen, pool table, living room, my room and my daughter's and my son's room. We always share the same room pretty much. So yeah. Let me show you around the outside. This used to be the warden's office. But we transform it into a penthouse. Why not, right? Why not transform it into a fucking penthouse up here? This is the jail here. See? Fucking Penio. Press play again.
The box fell over with a startling crash. They jittered to their feet, babbling hoarsely. Their hands trembled and their jaws twitched with uncontrollable nerves, and their stubbly faces grew grey with fear. "You're a crazy girl," Lem snarled through stiffened lips. "You've been dreaming, seeing things in your sleep. Bet Mr. Standage is home right now, wondering what's coming. Two lumberjacks in the rear, great hulking fellows, shuffled furtively toward the rear of the store, where a door led out to the back road. Shoulders hunched, they slunk out into the night. Old Matt, the storekeeper, opened his mouth, gulped, but no words were issued. "Lem's right," the lanky woodsman muttered, and eased unobtrusively toward the door. Scorn, sneering anger effaced all other emotions in Lorne. These men were afraid, that was it, deathly afraid of something. They wouldn't help, they dared not help. They were trying to make her out as mad, subject to hallucinations. She'd not seen. God, if only she hadn't. See how they were scattering like chaff, slinking away into the night like cowardly rabbits. "I did not dream," she blazed. "And you, and you, and you." She stabbed an accusing finger at each cowering man in turn. "You know it as well as I. You're afraid. Cowards, all of you." Then her scorn broke down. She was a frightened, sobbing girl again. "Please," she implored, and choked over the words. "Help my Frank. They've made a mad thing out of him. They're whipping him with terrible whips. Oh, please." They looked at each other uneasily. Terror was bright in their eyes. The gangling woodsman had already edged toward the entrance, and he moved suddenly into the blackness. There was an oath, an exclamation, a squeal of terror from the escaping man as he rebounded back into the room, feet clumping angrily. "Good Lord, Wally, what's the matter with you?" someone said gruffly. Wally shrank against the shelves, trembling like a leaf. Two men entered with hearty, banging strides like a breath of fresh air into that brooding, fetid room. Laura gave vent to a gasp of relief. Here were men who'd understand, who'd believe her. More, they would act. They'd force these others into shamed movement. "Oh, thank God you've come, Sheriff."
Tell them how old you are. And what's your name?
The tall, spare man with the grey hair and
I just turned
12
years old.
With an air of surprise. What are you doing out this time of night, Mr. Standard?
My name is Velma.
His companion, a stout, rubicund individual with a bright gold watch chain across his ample stomach and a shabby stethoscope peeping out of his vest pocket, looked quickly at Laura's drawn blood.
You know that zombie chick will fuck? Yeah, that's her daughter, pretty much. So, yeah. This is her daughter. That zombie chick will fuck. You know that smart zombie? Yeah, that. Press play.
Bloodless face, then at the staring, silent men in the store. He was the village physician, Dr. Alva Carey. He'd stopped several times at their cottage to pass the time of day. What's happened, Laura? He asked sharply. Everything was a haze to her. Precious minutes were passing while Frank... She sobbed out. You must believe me. Madmen with a monster who whips them. They've caught my husband. They have him chained. They're driving him mad. Oh, doctor, sheriff, you must save him. There was a split second of hesitation in which time seemed to stand still. Would they think her mad too, as those others pretended? Would they? Dr. Alva Carey cleared his throat. That little sound crashed upon Laura with the dreadful effect of 1,000 tons. Oh, God, he didn't believe. I'd, suggest, he said with careful casualness, a little sleeping draught tonight, Laura. He then fished in his capacious pocket, pulled out a fold of brown paper and extended it to her. She dashed it violently out of his hand. He dropped to the floor, burst open, and white, crystalline powder sprinkled over the dirty pine boards.
How far?
Fools, all of them.
And yes, a pregnant me.
She caught hold of the sheriff's rusty black coat with a desperate, imploring gesture. Sheriff, I demand you do your duty. I tell you, I saw him with my own eyes, marching in chains right in front of my own house. I saw Frank. He stopped, looked at me, and then that frightful monster whipped him on. Oh, if you don't hurry, it'll be too late. Too late.
Love you.
Sheriff Tom Beasley looked down at the panting, swaying girl. His lips tightened. There was perceptible hesitation in his manner. Well, Mrs. Standish, he drawled. If you put it that way, I suppose there's nothing else for me to do but go hunting through the woods. But that tale of yours, as Dr. Carey can tell you, is one of the oldest stories we've got round these here parts. That's how Superstition Mountain, back at your place, got its name. Dr. Carey nodded absently. That's right, Laura, he muttered, but his manner was fidgety, as if he were anxious to get away. But you will go, won't you, Sheriff? She implored. Sheriff Beasley sighed audibly, tightened his belt, looked with longing eyes at the ancient stove, plentifully decorated with tobacco juice, spat, and then said, "All right this minute, ma'am. I'll get out right now and comb the woods. My advice to you, though, is to go back home, since it's there by this time." The sheriff turned to the silent few in the store. "And you boys want to help me?" he inquired genially.
Oh, shit.
"I'll swear you in as deputies." No one answered. As one man, the lumberjacks drifted to the door and vanished hastily into the night. Lem brought up the rear. His dark glowing eyes were full on Laura as he passed, and then he too was gone. Dr. Carey fidgeted and looked at his watch. "Good Lord," he muttered. "I've got a call to make. Bye, Laura. Don't worry. Frank will be all right. I bet he's waiting for you now." And then he was out hastily. The next moment, the rattle bang of his Ford made thundering echoes along the road. Sheriff Beasley looked at Matt Kroll, the storekeeper, who seemed as if frozen behind his counter, and chuckled morosely. Lots of help a peace officer gets in Squam, eh, Matt? He then turned to Laura. "Now, don't you go worrying," he advised. "Know these woods like a book. If there's a bunch like you say in there, I'll get 'em." His grim lips were a straight, compressed line, and his lean, sinewy hand patted the holster that protruded underneath the rusty black of his coat. A tarnished star gleamed dully on his shirt. But Laura detected skepticism in his frosty blue eyes, and saw the imperceptible wink he tipped old Matt. Then he clumped through the door, down the sagging steps, His boots made dull, thudding noises in the night and died away to a faint shuffle.
Pardon me.
And I know if I fail, it's going to cost a lot of people their jobs.
Got a fella.
NRL's master coach Wayne Bennett faces his biggest challenge yet.
Were you expecting my call?
Your controller.
Chapter 3. The Handprints of Horror. Laura pressed her hand to her burning temples. No one believed her, not even the sheriff. And yet, faint hope, he had promised help. He was efficient, he knew the woods, so perhaps... A dull ache pervaded her being. Somehow she knew that Beasley would never find Frank. That skull-faced man with a whip, driving his chained maniacs along. No human being could find him. A little moan parted her gelled lips. Old Matt Kroll stirred. His shrunken visage was a faint blur behind the counter. What do you aim to do now, Miss Standish? His voice was high and querulous. Laura started. She'd forgotten he was still there. Suddenly she was afraid of this store, with its flickering yellow shadows, of the wizened storekeeper whose rheumy eyes blinked like those of a cat. I'm going back home, she gasped. Perhaps my husband has returned. Perhaps it was all. She was nearing the door, poised for flight. She stopped, lifted a bewildered hand to her forehead. Was it possible this was all a dreadful dream that she had never even seen? Matt pressed the counter with stiff fingers, a driving terror cracking his voice. Don't you do that, Miss Standish. For God's sake, don't you go back to that place. Stay here in the village. I'll put you up in my place. Only don't go back. If it's... He broke off then, clamped his trembling lips tight. He'd said too much, but Laura shook her head wearily. I must, she said, very low. If Frank is there, he'll need me. Look, thanks. She fled out into the cool air, driving her aching limbs through the murky dark once more. Matt's quavering accents followed her, hoarse with warning, with fear. Don't go. Wait, I want it. But the dense, marching trees swallowed his words. Up and up she climbed, up to the base of Superstition Mountain, where their cottage nestled, the secluded, lonely house in which they'd planned to spend such a lovely summer. Laura's lips drew back in a bitter groan, even as she flogged her way through the impenetrable darkness. Each tree was a thing of menace, behind which lurked a maniac with the glaring eyes. Each whisper of wind in the branches, the crackling hiss of the whip, each...
Dog tags. The device is supposed to be angled to trigger a burning feeling from the neck down, he told the others. See how it's angled up?
Rewind. Go the way back. I don't know how it's that far, but rewind.
Zing Communication and Charlie Cooper Audio present The Infection. Written by Craig DeLuey. Performed by Garrett Michael Brown. Chapter 1. Falling Down. Ethan reached the end of his patience trying to explain how to solve factoring equations when everybody started falling down. Hacking at the blackboard with a piece of chalk to guide his teenage students through a third example, he heard the first distant scream. The chalk broke in his hand, and he accidentally scratched the board with his fingernails. A shiver of revulsion coursed through his body. He peered at his algebra class over the rims of his glasses. Let's try that again. Engaged by his personal tone, some of the kids smiled back. The rest slouched at their desks and stared out the window at the green lawn washed in spring sunshine. Finishing the example, he slapped chalk dust from his hands and said, "Okay, who wants to take a crack at this one? Where would you begin to solve for x?" "Wow!" Several of the...
What is it? Got you. Press play.
Students shouted at once. Two of the boys stood to look out the window. Ethan frowned. Come on, guys.
Thank you,
Butts in
boss.
seats.
You're
We've only
welcome.
got 15 minutes left. There was an accident, Trevor Jackson said. His eyes gleamed with excitement. A bunch of people are lying on the ground out there. It's crazy. Another scream in the distance. Ethan took a few steps toward the window. The kids stood to get a better look outside. Footsteps pounded the hallway outside. Ethan turned just in time to see two teachers jog by his classroom. A door slammed. He took several steps toward the hallway now, wondering if there was some type of emergency, if he should be doing something special to protect his kids. What's that sound, Mr. Bell?
Oh, and Survivors Camp is just down the road from here, from the jail. This is our gang compound, but the Survivor Camp, what I own, is just down there. Just down that way down there. So, yeah. Just so you know where the survivors, they are fucking down that way. Survivors Camp, the safe zone what I own, is down there. So, yeah. This is our gang compound here at the prison, where the safe zone is down there. Press play.
I don't know, Ethan murmured. He knew. Why deny it? It was screaming.
How blind.
Screaming that wouldn't stop. Screaming that went on and on and on. Whoever was screaming was in extreme, unending pain. Strong enough to make them howl at the top of their lungs for minutes. There seemed to be a lot of people doing it. Some outside and some inside the school. In the classrooms, down the hall. He now wondered if he should be here at all. His wife was at work, their toddler Mary at daycare. He took another step toward the door. Would he get fired if he left? Trevor's face contorted. Then he fell screaming. Blood spurted as he cracked his nose on the floor. The other kids shrank back with surprised yelps. Trevor lay on his side with his back arched, arms outstretched, hands splayed into claws. His eyes bulged. His mouth screamed at a volume Ethan hadn't believed possible. Ethan felt the urge to run. Do something! Lucy Gall shouted at him. He glared back at her with wide, watery eyes. Yes, I'm gonna call 911. Lucy fell. Her body jerked in little spasms on the floor. The crotch of her jeans flooded with a dark stain. Then she screamed, loud and shrill enough to damage eardrums. The students shouted at each other to do something. One of the boys got down on his knees and shook her. His eyes rolled back into his skull, and he fell over. It's in the ventilation system, Ethan thought. Something's in the air all around us. 5 more kids fell within seconds of each other, spilling desks and scattering notebooks. They screamed. Moments later, Ethan was outside his body, watching himself run with the remaining students in a blind stampede to exit the school. In the hallway, they raced over the trembling, screaming bodies of teachers and students, as if they were parts of an intricate obstacle course. They bolted out the school's steel doors and into the sunshine and relative quiet. He froze in his tracks. The street beyond the lawn was a tangled mess of crashed vehicles. Plumes of smoke rose above the city in the distance. Now new waves of sound assaulted his ears. Car alarms, horns, sirens, and rising up above it all, the distant sound of thousands upon thousands of mouths screaming in unison like an auditory glimpse of hell. This is everywhere. He kept running. Students toppled around him as if cut down by an invisible scythe. The screaming filled him with blind panic now, an irrational fear of the supernatural, as if actual demons were at his heels. A motorcycle roared by, its spilled rider cartwheeling through the air. In the distance, a plane fell from the sky. These things barely registered in his consciousness. All he could think about was Mary's safety. He had to get to her. Please, God, spare her. Take these kids. Take Carol. Take me. If anything happens to my little girl, the world will end. He got into his car and started the engine. The radio sobbed hysterically at him. He turned it off. and that was when he noticed the screaming had stopped. Twitching bodies carpeted the lawn. Those who escaped the attack walked among them trembling and hugging their ribs in shock. So rapid was the transmission of the mysterious virus that swept the world over a period of just 48 hours. So sudden the onset of disease that scientists would later claim that it must be somehow linked to human-engineered nanotechnology, some kind of weapon that escaped the lab. The government traced the origin of the pandemic to a village near secret facilities in China, but they'd never find out the truth. And Ethan would never teach again. After 3 days, the Screamers woke up. 12 days later. Chapter 2. The Survivors. They are refugees, forced from everything they consider home, searching for a safe place. They have become nomads, living on whatever they can find. But mostly they're survivors. They're good at surviving because they're on the road. They're still alive. They have done the things one had to do to survive. They have all killed, or they wouldn't be here. They haven't lost anybody since Wednesday, when they buried Philip in Wilkinsburg. There are 5 of them now, and they sit ramrod straight in the hot, dim passenger compartment of the armored personnel carrier. Rifles between their knees, they pass around a bottle of water. They sit in a tense silence, jewelry, bracelets, and watches, and wedding rings. The people outside know they're in here, and they want in. The survivors wonder if they've killed everything for which they want to live. Wonder if it might grow back again, given enough time. If only they can find sanctuary. The survivors are adaptive. People who will do whatever it takes to survive naturally don't trust others. But to travel the road, one must be in a gang. To survive the experience day after day, as they have, that gang must function as a single protective organism. Each has been tested by violence, and if they failed, they all would have died. They know this. At this point, after what they've seen and done, this sense of responsibility to each other is what keeps them from collapsing into hysteria or catatonia. Fear, sorrow, guilt, rage. These and other emotions are just as dangerous as the infected outside and must likewise be killed. They're bound for the children's hospital, based on a theory. They have the Bradley, weapons, and the illusion of safety as long as the rig's engine keeps humming and its treads keep moving. They need supplies, though, especially water and diesel. They need to find a place unspoiled by infection, where they can rest. The simple fact is they can't keep fighting like this. You can only win so many fights before it feels like you're losing. They sense a subtle shift in the atmosphere, a sudden drop in temperature. Outside, it begins to rain. He sits in the back near the exit ramp, across from the cob, a place of respect among the survivors, as whoever sits there is the first to leave the vehicle and the last to re-enter. The others admire and try to imitate her cool. Sarge may be the commander of the Bradley, but they consider Anne their leader, because without her example and unfaltering aim with the scoped rifle, they'd all be dead. They know she'll do whatever it takes. She has 2 long scars on her left cheek, and a short one on her right. The survivors assume she's ex-military, and imagine she has a romantic and violent past. Anne doesn't tell them she has an overwhelming feeling that once they finally stop moving and find a place of rest where they can be truly safe, she's gonna burst inside out with a scream of guilt, terror, and anguish. Hours earlier, they'd found Sarge's infantry squad in the parking lot of a Walmart. The soldiers lay mangled like roadkill around a strange device. Piles of dead, infected...
And let me show you something else what I have. The penthouse. I didn't show you this before. See this here? This is an escape route, basically. Just in case. Like if someone tries to take this kingdom over, you know, or whatever. So, yeah, you know, just in case. Always have a good way out. Just in case
angled in a line of concertina wire surrounded them.
Another one.
The dead stared wide-eyed into oblivion. Many of the bodies were badly burned and emitted a sickening, sweet barbecue stench.
Yeah, I am.
Bits of charred clothing fluttered in the light breeze.
Cook you up
A few infected stumbled blindly among the remains, gnawing on human meat from a dismembered arm or leg. Crows shrieked in protest as the Bradley approached at 40 miles an hour. Then an enormous flock of the birds exploded into the air, dribbling morsels of flesh from bloody beaks as they filled the sky. Sarge cut down the few infected in the area with several bursts from the Bradley's machine gun. Outside, he warned the survivors not to step on any of the bodies. Of course we won't, they told him. We'll respect your dead. It's not a matter of respect, he said. These people, see how bloated they are? They can burst, spray fluids. You could catch the bug. 6 days ago, the Bradley had dropped off the squad of 6 soldiers, who were supposed to operate on their own in the field for 3 hours, and then withdrew for the badly needed repair of the vehicle's steering. The soldiers had tested a non-lethal weapon against the infected that used active denial technology. They deployed a line of concertina wire, set up their device, and blasted a klaxon to attract any infected within hearing range. The device, shaped like a large hoe attached to the face of a basketball backboard, is a transmitter that beams energy waves that penetrate the skin and produce an intense burning sensation. The idea is that whoever is subjected to this reflexively tries to avoid the beam and submits. It didn't work on the infected. They only became enraged and attacked until their flesh sizzled. And even then, they still attacked until they fell down. Another Bradley had been tasked to pick up the soldiers, but it never came, because by the time it left on its mission to recover the squad, the soldiers were already dead. Sarge knew this, but had to see for himself that it was true. These dead boys were his people. They'd served together in Afghanistan. He placed his hand over his heart, a gesture of respect he picked up from the Afghans, and collected their dog tags. The device is supposed to be angled to trigger a burning feeling from the neck down, he told the others. See how it's angled up? That's not an accident. They were desperate. In the end, they tried to burn out the eyes of the infected. They tried to blind them. Is it okay to take these guns? They asked him. They're better than ours. Will you teach us how to shoot them? I heard about another test of long-range acoustic weapons over in Philadelphia. That also failed, Sarge went on. The device was supposed to cause intense pain in the ear using a certain frequency of sound, but it actually attracted the infected. They came in hundreds and killed the unit that deployed it. Pointless. The pack of dogs yelped in the distance. Somebody far away fired an automatic weapon, which set off a brief, crisp flurry of gunfire that sounded like the pop of firecrackers. None of the non-lethals worked, Sarge said. The only thing that can stop these motherfuckers is a rifle and the will to use it. The armored personnel carrier smashes into the abandoned traffic jam on squealing treads. Its 25 tons shoulder aside a minivan and crush the front of a sports car into metal pancake. The words, boomstick, are neatly stenciled on the barrel. The rig plows into a pair of infected and flings them down the street in a fine red mist. The Bradley emerges from the intersection and grinds to a halt, its engine idling. The vehicle fills the street, flanked by stores topped by low-rise apartments. Using the vehicle's periscopes, its 3-man crew scans the bleak, shattered landscape, visible through a smoky haze. The rain has stopped. The sun is shining again. In the back, the survivors cringe. Stopping is bad. They finger their weapons as Sarge wedges his way into the back and squats, sweating in his camouflage uniform and helmet. The commander is a large black man, and his size makes the cramped passenger compartment appear even smaller. As always, he looks at Anne when he wants the civilians to do something. They appear to have some sort of unspoken agreement about the sharing of authority. Drugstore, he says. Once you're out, it's on the left. Locked up, says Anne. Not that we could see. Any signs of forced entry? Door looks fine and the windows are all intact. No damage then? I saw no vandalism, no fire or water damage. Cleaned out already? No, That's the thing. From what I could tell, there's still stuff on the shelves. Plenty of it. The survivors allow themselves a brief smile. The store hasn't been looted or damaged. They'll be able to get supplies. Not everything they need, but something. Every useful item they can find is a piece that must be fitted into the puzzle of survival. How many infected? It's worth the risk, Anne says, and Sarge nods. Showtime, he says. Ethan takes a deep breath to steel his nerves. He fidgets with the M4 carbine and tries to remember what Sarge told him to do if the weapon jams. Slap the magazine and pull the bolt back. Observe the firing chamber and release the bolt, then tap it and squeeze off the next round. If a double feed, detach the mag and drop the rounds. Assuming he has time and presence of mind to do all this while a swarm of infected race hell for leather at him while shrieking their inhuman cries of recognition and rage, he is certain that he's living on borrowed time and that one day he will be killed or infected. He was a math teacher. He understands probabilities. Every day, just to live, he has to give it everything he has. If just once he's a little slow or takes a wrong turn or is in the wrong place at the wrong time, they'll catch him. How many days can a man go on like that? Never be a little slow. Never take a wrong turn to someone more qualified. On the other hand, if they found the soldiers alive, Sarge might have left them stranded and gone off with his infantry to fight. The soldier gives the cop a sharp glance. She blushes and adds, "If you need a friend, you can talk to me, that's all." "I have no friends," Sarge says. "All my friends are dead." The ramp eases to the ground on whining hydraulics, flooding the compartment with smoggy sunshine and the acrid stench of burning chemicals.
Yeah, but...
The survivors exit the Bradley and fan out to establish 360-degree security, as Sarge taught them to do. Anne says she'll clear the store of infected before the group enters. Wendy, the cop, says she'll provide backup. Then the kid insists on coming, but Anne tells him to stay and watch the street. They disappear into the store, guns first. The kid grins, dressed up like something from a reality show about teenage bounty hunters with his black t-shirt, urban BDU pants, bulletproof vest, and SWAT cap. He chews on a toothpick as he scans the street through the close combat optic of his M4. "Is the end of the world not killing you fast enough, Reverend?" he says. Paul pauses while lighting a cigarette, then finishes and takes a drag. He exhales a long stream of smoke and picks up his shotgun. "This makes the apocalypse just a little rosier for me. Isn't that God's job?" A shadow flickers across the Black Reverend's face, but he says airily, "God sent us you, my boy." The kid stops grinning. He's not sure, but he believes the old man just zinged him. He's easily zinged. Even the slightest remark makes him anxious, confused, and angry. Oblivious, Paul takes another drag and coughs into his fist. He has already forgotten the exchange. The kid envies that kind of cool that comes with age. For the kid, every interaction has enormous stakes. "I hope it rains again. A really big rain that washes all this shit away," Paul says. The kid admires the thought. "Me too, Rev." Wendy appears at the door and gives the all clear. The survivors enter the store as the Bradley pulls away in a burst of exhaust. The big rig crumples another car like tinfoil before staging an abrupt turn into a nearby alley. Inside, Paul marches to the nearest secluded corner, drops his pants and craps loudly into a 5-gallon bucket covered with a toilet seat. Growing up, he was the newcomer, and he thought he'd have to suffer some type of hazing. But nobody cared, too occupied by their own survival. Then a magic thing happened. 2 days ago, driving in the Bradley, Anne cleaned his glasses for him. A touching maternal gesture that made him feel like a full citizen of this group. Last year, John Wheeler, a giant senior, picked him up in the cafeteria during study hall and dangled him over a garbage can in front of 40 other students who watched with a mixture of tension, schadenfreude, and blunt relief that Wheeler wasn't doing it to them. The trick was to always stay in the middle of the herd. The trick was never to stand out. They were good at that. But with his good grades and clumsy adolescent skinniness, Todd Paulson stood out. The teachers called him smart, and some of the other kids hated him for it. Then other kids hated him too, without knowing why, just to be safe. John Wheeler fell down during the screaming, and that means he's one of the infected. Many kids who were in study hall that day, the ones who cheered and the ones who did nothing out of fear, are either dead or controlled by the pathogen. For all the kid knows, he's the sole surviving witness of what happened to Todd Paulson during those terrible 5 minutes. Yet, he can't stop reliving it, just as he can't stop reliving all his other minor humiliations. It's easier to shed your name than your baggage. He wishes they were all alive, just so they could see him now. The kid, driving with a group of adults armed to the teeth, fighting through an apocalyptic wasteland. They'd absolve him of his humiliations with their admiration and respect. They'd know they'd never be able to fuck with him again, because this time, he has a gun. Wendy finds some plastic bags at the cashier and hands them to the others. Panic buying cleared most of the shelves before the infection put an end to consumerism. But there are still useful things here. She discovers a squashed plastic container filled with packages of beef jerky behind the open register. A great find. Some idiot rifled the register for its cash but left food on the floor. Goes into her bag. She finds a full pack of matches, a large bag of salt, children's vitamins, mosquito repellent, condoms, a bottle of sunscreen. It all goes into the bag. She finds a bottle opener, which she puts in her pocket. Next, a pack of bazooka gum, a valuable find. She spits out the old wad of gum from her aching jaws and pops in a fresh piece. She finds a box of tampons and displays it like a trophy to Anne, who merely nods as she scoops cans off the floor. Ethan pauses in one aisle and picks up a 3-subject spiral-bound notebook. He turns the blank pages as if skimming, and he sees tears welling in his eyes. "You okay, Ethan?" "No," he says. I mean, yes.
Fuck no. I'll be back. Oh. Okay, babe. Okay, daddy. Stay there. Got it. Can I just no? Shit. What are you guys doing? Die. 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 You are not a very good god. Die. 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 Just die. 3, 2, 1, action. That takes care of him. Take that as all examples. If you mess up, you'll die. Do your job. Dickheads. But, whatever. Press play.
She reaches to pat his shoulder, but cancels the gesture. Leaders in a crisis are not tender. Leaders in a crisis are strong. She has to be strong. He adds, "Sure you're okay?"
So, do you smoke
Yes.
weed, daughter?
Sometimes I forget
Of
where I
course.
am.
Cool.
Rather
Well,
than when.
he's a bun.
Fine now.
Keep couple notes.
Why don't you
Keep
go
this
see if
one
you
on
can find
respect.
something worth taking in
Got
the
it,
pharmacy,
got it.
she
Good girl.
says. Especially tranquilizers and sleeping pills.
Let's have
Prazosine
blunt now.
for the bad
Let's
dreams.
smoke
Look
no
for
pot.
vitamins,
Let's have
gauze,
blunt.
antibiotics, ibuprofen. Well, hell, anything we can use. All right. Wendy still considers herself a cop, which is why she still wears her uniform and badge. To her, symbols matter, especially in a time of crisis. The other survivors agreed at first, looking to her as an authority figure, but not anymore. To them, she's a valuable member of the team, but otherwise just another refugee, no different than them. She can't understand why they put so much trust in Anne when she fights even harder and takes even bigger risks for the group. Wendy just wants to help, to serve, and protect. The fact is, a lot of cops died back at the station, so she could go on doing her job. She owes a debt to the dead. They have witnessed the end of the world, one horrible scene at a time, each as potent as the last. Pillars of smoke rising from burning communities. The sprawling wreckage of a crashed Boeing 727 scattered for miles along the highway among blackened, half-melted cars driven by charred skeletons. The infected feeding on the dead, screaming on the radio instead of music and commercials. For Wendy, the most crushing thing she's seen is all of the abandoned police cars once manned by people sworn to protect life and property, but now swept away in the violence. The breaking of the thin blue line signaled the collapse of law and order. It meant every man for himself. The infected took only minutes to wipe out half her precinct. The other cops saved her life, salvation she must continue to earn. Strangely, the uniform probably extended her lifespan. The survivors all wear dark colors, various shades of black, tan, and gray. Paul, for example, is still wearing his black clerical suit with its white collar. They're sharp. They're the best of what's left. But they're largely here by accident. In the early days of infection, they'd spill from the Bradley, and the infected would rush straight at anybody wearing bright colors. Red excited them most. Everybody who wore red died or became infected. Those wearing orange and yellow were next. It was Philip who figured that out. The financial analyst, dressed in a grimy black